All right, you guys, these are some notes. It's the second, really the last third of your notes on the integumentary system. You should have this note packet out in front of you. You've already done page 1 and page 2. If that doesn't sound right to you, you need to go back and take a look at the first ed puzzle that we did on the integumentary system. Today, you're going to do 8 through 10, so you're going to be labeling some parts of the integumentary system. You're going to be answering some questions about some of the structures that we're going to be talking about, and then labeling one more time the nails. If you don't have this, stop this, go get it, come back and get moving. We're going to do this, and then I'm going to briefly introduce to you a project that you're going to be working on over the next week or so in class and for homework. So I ended the last notes with this same slide. Just a quick recap. There are 3 layers of the skin: the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis, which is not labeled here, but it's really kind of where this fatty tissue is, that lowest layer. We know that the epidermis consists of 4 layers. Melanocytes are the pigment cells within one of those layers. And then what we're going to talk about today is some of the structures within the dermis, and then that go into the epidermis as well. So we're going to be talking about hair, we're going to be talking about sweat glands, we're going to be talking about oil glands, and kind of how those all work together within the dermis. So first of all, let's start with the glands in our skin. There are 2 types of glands found. The first is called a sebaceous gland, and these produce sebum. Another name for sebum is oil. There are more of these on the scalp and the face, and then none on the palms and the soles of the feet. So depending on where you look on the body, you may see a more or less amount of oil being produced. Some of us also just, naturally have more oil that our skin produces. The amount of oil produced by these glands is based on inheritance. Oil production is important. It helps maintain the health of our skin and also our hair. But we know that there are some things that can happen when too much oil is produced in the hair and in the skin, especially on the face. And I'll kind of leave it at that because I'm sure these will be researched by some of you in our integumentary disorder project. So just know for now we have these sebaceous glands that are attached to what we're going to talk about in a little while, this hair here, okay? And so they're attached here and they secrete oil. Again, some in more places than others. Second kind of gland is called a sweat gland. A more scientific term for that is an eccrine gland. These are long tubes that produce perspiration or sweat. They do what you think. So they kind of look like little knotted up tubes at the bottom, and then they kind of are long tubes that enter onto the surface of the skin, and they secrete sweat. Sweat is mostly water, but it also contains small amounts of salt, sugars, amino acids, and urea. Sweat serves a couple of purposes. One is to get rid of waste, and the other is to regulate body temperature. So when we talked about homeostasis, how our body can sweat and it helps to cool us down. That is one of the main purposes of these sweat glands. So certain people have more sweat glands than others as well. Certain people also just sweat more than others, and that's genetic as well. When perspiration mixes with bacteria on the skin, this can produce an odor. So there are certain areas where more sweat is produced and also where more bacteria lives naturally within our bodies. And we have very simple ways to cope with this, right? One of them was called deodorant. And we know the deodorant you normally put in your armpits, right? And that's because there's more bacteria that naturally exists in your armpits because you sweat there. And also because of the fact that the skin is folded on top of itself, so more bacteria lives there. How do we combat that smell that sometimes occurs? By using deodorant. So again, sweat itself doesn't smell. It's when it mixes with bacteria that you get that smell. Okay, let's talk about hair. Depending on whether you're in the red or the gold group, you maybe already did the hair lab, or you're going to be doing it if you're on campus after you watch this. So either way, we're going to be introduced to some parts of the hair. The lab introduces you to more specific structures within the hair at a microscopic level. This is more how hair interacts within the dermis and epidermis. So the hair follicle root is located in the dermis. So if you look at this picture here, right, here's our follicle here. The part that's in the dermis is called the root. How does hair work? Hair that's coming out of your head, for example, is actually dead skin. But we have cells that are dividing and that are filled with keratin and pigments. We know that hair has different color depending on the pigmentation that is in the area where these cells are dividing. And they're being continuously pushed out as new cells are formed. So they're pushed up, 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 up. Um, the part of the hair that actually sticks out of the epidermis or above the skin is called the shaft of the hair, and we have varying lengths of those depending on where we're looking on our body. The texture of your hair, whether it's curly, straight, wavy, depends on the shape of the follicle. So the shape of this little opening on the surface of the skin actually determines the texture of your hair. All hair has the same texture at the root. It's when it gets out onto the surface of the skin that we actually see it exist with a certain texture. Oops. And then we also have these muscles that are connected to each hair follicle. They're called erector muscles, and they allow for hair to stand on end. This can be caused by emotion or fear. You've maybe also noticed when you're cold, you get goosebumps, and when you get goosebumps, you also have those hairs that stand on end. Again, that is because of muscles connected to each and every hair follicle. So to recap, the part that's underneath the skin is called the root. The part that's actually coming out, whether you're looking at your arms, your legs, your feet, your hands, or your head, that's called the shaft. A little bit more on hair. You also probably noticed that you have some hairs that you're constantly having to cut or shave, and you have some that just kind of grow to a certain length and then stop. This is because of differences in what we call the growth and rest stages. You can probably guess what these are based on their names. But the growth stage is when the hair cells in the dermis are dividing really quickly, and hair is getting pushed out, and the hair grows longer. Okay, your hair on your head is typically in a growth stage. Why? Because your hair is constantly growing on your head. Some of us have growth stages that are happening at a quicker rate than others, and that kind of determines how fast our hair grows. Okay, but either way, hairs on your head are constantly needing to be cut, right? So that has to do with that growth stage occurring more often. During rest stage, the follicle opening tightens, so that area on the surface of the skin where the hair comes out tightens, and the hair can't grow. Okay, so after this stage ends, the old hair that was kind of hanging out there building up will actually finally get pushed out, and the follicle will allow for hair to begin to grow again. But during the rest stage, the name implies what it does. There's a rest. There's not a growth. There's a rest. Okay. The length of growth and rest stage causes hairs to be different lengths, right? So you've probably noticed that you don't have to trim your hairs on your arms or your hands. They naturally are going to grow to a certain length, and that varies person to person, but they're not just going to grow and grow and grow and grow like the hairs in your head will. This is because of a variation in that growth and rest stage, that pattern. Again, we're going to talk more about hair in the lab, or you maybe already looked at some different hairs and compared if you were here at school. If you were not at school, you will watch a video about how hair is used in forensic science, but also how there's a limited use of it. Nails are our last little component of the integumentary system. Not a lot to them, but they're important. So nails are both for protection, and also they're useful for tools. Imagine trying to pick up and move stuff, especially small stuff, or like open something, right? If you didn't have nails, nails are super helpful. And there's some general anatomy of the nail that you need to be familiar with, okay? The main part of the nail right here is called the nail body. That's like the main component of the nail. I'm going to skip this second one for now. There's a lighter area towards the bottom of your nail, and it looks like kind of a half circle shape. It varies kind of on what it looks like depending on, just person to person. But this is called the lunula. I always think like lunar. It looks like a little half moon. And this is, again, just that lighter pigmented area still kind of attached to that nail body. The sides of your nails are called the lateral nail fold. So this is where it looks like the nail is actually going into the skin on the side. And where the nail comes out on the bottom is called the cuticle. Another more scientific name for that is the eponychium. I do not need you to know that name. As long as you know that this is called the cuticle, you are good to go. Again, not a lot to nails, but they do actually serve a couple of really important purposes. And we know that one overall purpose of the integumentary system is protection, and nails really do serve that purpose as well. So I'm going to just sort of click through these really quickly. You're going to see something similar to this on your test. You don't have to label this right now, but just know that we've just talked about actually a lot of structures within the skin, right? The epidermis is at the top, the dermis is in the middle, the hypodermis is at the bottom. We have blood vessels that flow through this, so this is vascularized. We know that hair follicles, sweat glands, oil glands all exist in the dermis and then interact with other components of the dermis and epidermis. We also know that from our previous notes, there are multiple layers of the epidermis that contain different kinds of cells, including the melanocytes, which are the cells that produce pigments. So that's all we're going to talk about in terms of the integumentary system. When it's working well, it does its job very well, but there are quite a few diseases or disorders related to this system, just like there are in any other system as well. But we're going to spend a little bit of time, each of you is going to learn about one, either by yourself or with a partner, and then you're going to share your findings with the class. So how this project is going to work. First of all, I need you to make sure you're listening pretty carefully here, because I'm not going to go over this in too much detail in class. I'm going to ask that you use this as a way to gather this information. You're going to read through an assignment sheet that will be posted with a Google form that you're going to fill out online. And then it's your responsibility to ask questions if you have them. You're going to be picking a partner or choosing to work individually. I don't care which way it works out for you. No groups of 3, max group of 2, but I'm totally good if you're someone who just wants to work by himself. You're going to decide what diseases seem most interesting to you. Well, what's she talking about? I don't even know where to start for diseases. I'm going to show you in a second. I have a document that has, I think it's 27 diseases and disorders on it that you can kind of do a little bit of your own research on, and then you're going to be ranking. So I'm going to post a Google form that is going to contain the names of those diseases or disorders, and you're going to rank your top 5. Okay, so you're going to tell me in order which 5 are you most interested in. You're also going to tell me on this Google form whether you're working alone or with a partner. If you're working alone, you're just going to write your name. If you're working with a partner, you're going to write your name and your partner's name. I only need 1 Google form per group. Okay, so you and your partner both don't need to fill this out. Only one person does, but please make sure you've talked to the person you're going to partner with before you just assume and fill out that Google Doc. Because if you have someone's name on a Google Doc and they've got their name on some other person's, right? If they think they're partnered with someone else, that isn't going to work out. And if I can't figure it out, I'm just going to assign and assume that people are either working independently, or I'm just going to pick a partner group. So please make sure you communicate before you fill this form out. My goal is to make sure that everyone gets one of their top 3 choices. I can't completely guarantee that, but it's worked out like that in the past. Basically, within each class period, I'm only going to assign 1 disorder or disease to a group or person, right? So I'm not going to have 3 groups or individuals doing melanoma. Right? I'm going to, only 1 group per class is going to be able to be assigned that. So please do a little research on these. Some of these you've probably heard of, some of these you haven't. Some of them are really kind of gross and weird. Some of them are kind of not so gross, but all of them are pretty interesting. And it's interesting to see how slight kind of changes within the integumentary system can lead to a disease or disorder. Again, some of them are ones that a lot of people live with, are very manageable. Some of them are more drastic. This Google form is due Friday, November 6th by 4 p.m. I know that some of us don't have class on Friday, November 6th, and that's okay. I'm just giving you all until the end of the week at 4 p.m. If you do not fill out a Google form, or someone, your partner does it for you, if your name is not on any Google form, I'm going to assume that you want to work by yourself and you don't care what disorder you have. So I'm going to assign you a disorder for you alone. Okay, so please, if you want to work in a pair and you care about what disorder you want, fill this out. Okay, you're also going to get points for filling this out. So you're not going to gain points if I have to randomly assign you. You're going to have class time, an entire class period to work on this on either Monday or Tuesday, the 9th or the 10th, depending on what period you're in with me. And then this is going to be due, and I don't know why the word week is there. It's due and will be presented in class for periods 3 and 4 on Thursday the 12th, and our presentations might spill over into the next week. And then for periods 5 and 6 on Friday the 13th. So everyone is presenting. Depending on your project that you do, there are a couple of different ways that can work out. And it's going to work out for us to do either in class or over Zoom. So no matter where you are, you're going to get to present with your partner. And the expectation is everyone has it done and ready to present on, if you're in third or fourth period, the 12th, fifth and sixth period, the 13th. So your only homework beyond this ed puzzle is to submit the Google form. Let me just quickly show you what this assignment sheet is going to look like, and this will be posted as well. Please read through this. Basically, I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of research, and I'm going to scroll down. First, here are the 27. Pick a couple of disorders that look interesting to you. Again, some of these you've probably heard of, some of these you haven't. You're going to be ranking your top 5 on a Google form. But let's know a little bit about what it is that you're going to have to do before you do any ranking. You're going to be with your partner or by yourself creating some sort of informational visual. So PowerPoint, you can make a brochure, you just have to be able to show it to us online, or a video. I've had quite a few people do videos on iMovie. And this is nice because in class you can just kind of like share your screen, or if you're in class, pull it up and we just press play and that's that. You can just link it to YouTube. It's super easy. What are you going to include? No matter what kind of presentation you do, you're going to make sure you include the name of your disorder, what part of the system is affected. You're going to describe in your own words what exactly that disorder is, causes, symptoms, treatment, and potential risk for complications. So all of those things will be included. And you're going to need some photos or diagrams. I say at least one. You're probably going to have more than one. And then any other important information, you're going to be citing your sources using MLA formatting, and you're going to need 3 reliable sources. And we can talk more about what that means if you have questions. Here's a rubric that contains some information about what exactly you need to do in order to get a perfect score on this. And if you follow the rubric and you include everything you have and you've done a little bit of research and you've worked collaboratively with your partner, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to get that perfect score. Okay. So please let me know if you have any questions. You can email me, you can ask in class, or you can comment on Classroom. But again, this is due for every class period by Friday, November 6th at 4 p.m. Please make sure that it is submitted on time.